Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cult Musical Zone, episode 25. It's a very special episode, not only because it's our 25th episode, but we have an eclectic cast to talk about one of the most infamous, but in my opinion, one of the most misunderstood films of all time, Howard the Duck. So we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. You can plug your socials, and yeah, we'll get started. So who wants to go first?
I can go first. It's Helena. I've been on a few of these. I have. I'm on Instagram under Northwest by Southwest Creative, and this is my first time seeing Howard the Duck, so this is gonna be a ride.
All right, well, my name's John. It's been a while since I've been on here. Instagram's my main thing, DocJohn90. I saw Howard the Duck a long time ago for the first time, and a part of me thought, maybe I jumped on the bandwagon of hating it, but I rewatched it this weekend and something. I'll share more later.
Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
I'm Hades. You could find my Instagram handle at Hades Nuts, and that's with two Z's. I'm part of the Ordinary Kids with Kevin and Renee, and we do Rocky Horror Shadowcasts. I've only been on one other podcast with Renee before, with you guys.
I'm Renee. I've been here exactly one other time with Roger Rabbit, the Roger Rabbit podcast. Also part of the Ordinary Kids. My Instagram is Agent Swift with a Y because I'm weird. And this was also my first time seeing the movie fully. So it was a wild ride. Can't wait to discuss.
My name's Kevin. As Hades said, I'm on the Ordinary Kids with her and Renee. My Instagram is KVNUR83. This is I haven't done many podcasts. First one I've done in a long time, so it should be fun.
And I'm James, of course. So a lot of people reached out to me when I was initially looking for people to do Howard the Duck, and they all asked the same question. Is Howard the Duck a musical? And to me, and cult musical fans around the world, this is a musical movie. Because to me, music drives this film. There are songs in this film that specifically drive the characters, their emotions. Just like Dick Tracy, a musical, although it was never marketed as a musical and it was never a tagline musical. And Helene and I actually discussed this last week on Instagram via message about, is Howard the Duck a musical? Is it too late to not do Howard the Duck? But we both came to the conclusion that it is a musical. So, you have anything else to say about that, Helena, before we jump in?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some people think that musicals are only musicals when there is dialogue that relates to the music, and the music is the actual dialogue. But this, I mean, has a musical framework on kind of bracketing it. So, and Howard was a music producer, so hey, why not? May as well.
And there's different types of musicals, and John knows this. John knows the term, where the music exists within the world and the characters are constant and aware of the music. What is it called again, John?
Forget, I'm drawing a blank. I think it's like Dianetic. Diegetic, thank you. Yes. It's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good example, like
Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy or Hedwig and the Angry Itch.
Yeah.
Or just watched this again a couple weeks ago, Phantom of the Paradise, where it's like it is a moment where people will acknowledge the music being sung and stuff like that. It's not like, okay, we're done. We're never going to mention the fact that we just did a big elaborate musical number. So
right. So it's not like Dolly singing "I Will Always Love You" in the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, or Jareth singing Magic Dance in Labyrinth, or Janet and Brad singing something in Shock Treatment in Rocky Horror.
Right.
Basically, diegetic is any music that the people in the movie can hear. Non-diegetic is music that only the audience can hear.
Mm-hmm.
Which, funny enough, Streets of Fire would also fall under that category.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the music's really, really important in Howard the Duck. And I don't think that I would have liked it as much if it didn't have those musical sequences. But I am not, believe it or not, a Howard the Duck aficionado. I love Howard the Duck. I haven't done much research on really the ins and outs because, spoiler alert, I don't like Marvel films. I'm not a superhero film fan. I like Barbed Wire with Pamela Anderson, and I like Tank Girl, and I like Batman and Batman Forever and Batman and Robin and Batman Returns, but I never have gotten caught up in the superhero Marvel DC craze. So I guess I look at it from a different angle, whereas superhero fans and Marvel fans might view this completely different. So that's why I wanted different perspectives on this, because I only focus on the musical aspects of this movie. If this movie did not have Leah Thompson in those songs, we probably wouldn't be talking about it right now on this particular podcast because I wouldn't have resonated with it. But the music's always the driving force for me. I listen to the music quite often, probably 4 times a week. So I'm going to take a step back. But in terms of, we all know that this is considered to be, quote unquote, the worst film of all time, or one of the worst films of all time. But I don't know. I personally don't buy it. So what are your opinions on, before we jump into the plot and the music, most importantly, what do you think overall of this, of what Howard is? I mean, there's so much to dissect in terms of what you think Howard is and how lambasted it was. I mean, but that's the legacy, and we'll get into that. But are you have any thoughts about just this crazy, crazy experience movie?
What's funny is that the way Howard is depicted in this movie, the character is way different in the comics. So in the comics, like, Howard is a very kind of misogynistic, like, cigar chomping, like, best way I could describe him is, I don't know if anyone's ever seen it was the one cartoon, like, the early mid 90s, Duckman.
Yes.
I know of it,
He's
yeah.
very much like
Mhm.
the actual character of Howard the Duck in the comics is very much like the Duckman character from that cartoon. He's, yeah, in this one he's a kind of like, in the movie version he's very sort of fish out of water, like, place he doesn't belong, where, like, in like the original Marvel comics, like, he's like very much just there. And I don't know, it's this is a different representation of the character than he normally is in the comics. And oddly enough, which is speaking of Marvel, this is actually the very first movie that Marvel ever produced. Howard the Duck. And then I think the next movie Marvel did after this, like pre MCU, was Blade.
There was
I
a
think-
Captain America in here too somewhere.
Yeah,
like
I think-
96.
And
There-
there
yeah,
was
there- There
a
was like the
Punisher
Roger
movie.
Corman ones. Roger Corman also did in like the early 90s. It was outside of Marvel, but it was like the Fantastic Four movie he did as well.
It was to hang on to the rights, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty
And
much,
the-
yeah.
So it
and-
wasn't like mainstream like it is now.
Oh
I'm
no, definitely not.
And there was a Punisher movie with Dolph Lundgren that came out like just
Yes.
after Howard.
Yes,
Mhm.
there was. I do remember that one. That was interesting.
But
Yeah.
didn't Albert Pune do Captain America movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
1983 or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
it
like-
has.
I want to say that the Captain America one, I think, was in like, I want to say the 70s. There was one where it was like Cap, but he had like actual like little wings on his helmet, and it was kind of very literal. And he had like a motorcycle. It was kind of, but it was like one of those, it was sort of like the Spider-Man
Yeah.
show that they had on like 3-2-1 Contact, where that was part of that, and it was kind of cheesy.
Yeah, it had Red Brown in it, and
Mhm.
yeah.
They also
They-
had two. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'll say, if anyone ever watched the Hulk show with Lou Ferrigno, there was like a lot of random like Marvel cameos in that. Like Thor was in there. I believe Spider-Man was in there as well. There was a lot of random like Marvel characters they threw in there, I think, just to acknowledge that it's a Marvel thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, Howard the Duck is definitely a Marvel thing because at the end of the one Oh goodness, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
There's a Howard the Duck cameo.
Hmm.
And like that was like the first time I think I was truly excited and be like, oh, it's Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
Wasn't he kind of like the chain smoking, like suit wearing Howard the
Absolutely. I liked that version of Howard the Duck better than this movie, just
Same.
because I feel like there's a lot more to go with that character, just how he was. I liked
Yeah.
the cut of his jib, so to say.
Yeah.
This Howard the Duck, he was like grungy, he had one-liners, but it all seemed forced.
Hmm.
If that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, I
totally
went
makes
into this movie thinking it was going to be wild and racy and inappropriate and sexy, and like I was very surprised that he was really mild mannered
He was
compared
very
to what. Yeah, I mean there was
So-
the one scene, but they never like did anything. They just
Yeah.
kind of insinuated.
And the
Mhm.
fact
So-
that this is actually PG,
Yeah,
which I found
PG.
really hilarious. The fact that like right out of the gate, you got like duck nudity, and it's like a PG movie. I'm like,
Yes.
okay, that was
Immediately.
very interesting.
immediately. Wow, play duck.
Duck boobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Centerfold.
The duck boobs. I was kind of like, what? Wait, was that just duck boobs? And I had to run it back and look at it. I was like, oh, that was duck boobs. Oh gosh.
I'm sure that got
Twice.
past the censors because it's like it's not human boobs, so it's perfectly fine.
But they're
Sure.
duck,
Any other boobs are
they're
fine,
duck
but
human hybrid boobs. Okay.
I
I don't know
think
if I'm
I,
okay with that.
I think I read that they actually censor those boobs in some countries because some countries found
I
them
wouldn't be
offensive.
surprised.
Yeah, they look like
I'm-
boobs.
yeah.
Be surprised
That's
either.
not surprising at all.
But so there's a lot of things, and again, I'm not a child of the 80s, but I love the 80s. There was so much magic that was going into this film. I mean, George Lucas, and then the screenwriters and the directors, which was a husband and wife team who also wrote one of the Indiana Jones films and American Graffiti. So it's not like this movie was some amateurs doing it. I mean, George Lucas bet a lot of money. I don't know if you know the trivia about like how much money George Lucas invested into this movie.
So
and
yeah,
it looks like it on screen. It's very. I mean, you can see the money is all over the screen.
so yeah,
Absolutely.
just
Especially
a
in that
couple.
first scene too, with the Ducktopia thing.
Mhm.
Crazy.
So it is weird. Just a couple weeks before this, a YouTube channel I follow called Yesterworld did a video about the production of this movie. And first of all, it took them years just to get the rights to Howard the Duck. And then when they eventually did they're like, okay, we're going to do it like this with Rick Baker, the famous Rick Baker doing this great elaborate puppet, but that didn't work out. So it's like, okay, we're going to do Howard as his CGI character because that stuff's starting to come out. And it's like, oh, the CGI looks like shit. Never mind. And so they did it how we see it in the movie, although they were originally going to do two different Howard the Ducks. They were going to do one full body Howard for the wide shots and stunt work, and then an up close one for basically the model they used was Admiral Akbar from Return of the Jedi. Like have a full body Akbar for far shots and whatever, and when he's sitting down, and then have an up close one for the camera. When he's talking, it's a bit more emotive and stuff like that. Problem was, as soon as they got like the up close Howard finished, they tested it out. Basically, everything was like literally falling apart. So, just like it seemed like Howard or Murphy's Law was following this movie. And I have a piece of trivia that I want to share before. I'm not sure if it'll come up, but so they had a lot of prospective people wanting to play or that they wanted to have play voice Howard the Duck. One of those that they basically cast was Robin Williams.
Mhm.
And Robin was invited to the set and they were showing him around and they showed him the Howard puppet. And they were telling him like, okay, this is how it's going to work. And so the story goes as to why, I think it was like, according to Tim Rose, who was the main puppet builder, who was showing him the puppet. The story he tells about why Robin left is because Robin was like, oh, can I try the puppet out? And they're like, yeah, sure. And he's doing it, and he's doing an impersonation of Tim Rose. And the director heard that and was like, God damn it, Rose, I told you to stop fucking around with the puppet when we're filming. And a crew member went up and said, that's not Tim, that's Robin. And the director then instantly goes, Robin, buddy, love having you here. And Robin's like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this movie. So
Well, Robin Williams also couldn't ad lib. because
Yeah.
the puppet had to be so in advance. They had to do everything in advance, so he couldn't like ad lib or anything, which was his.
Yeah,
his
it would
thing.
have been a very challenging role for him. He really relied on ad-libbing a lot. That was
Mhm.
his forte for sure. And for it to be so technical and precise, I think it would have been really challenging for him. And to have that sort of animosity amongst people on the set, that
Yeah.
doesn't seem his shtick, you know?
Yeah.
Who was
But
the voice of the duck?
it was
I
some.
I'm gonna
I gotta
have the
look him
other
up.
video. Yeah,
He's a guy that's
Everyone has
done.
to look him up.
yeah. We're having a
Well,
podcast together. We gotta look at it.
He's not a well-known actor, but he's done like some
We
Broadway
definitely
stuff.
we definitely know who this
Okay.
actor is.
His name is Chip Zien, Zin or Zien. He's done a
Chip-
lot of Broadway stuff, including being in the original Broadway production of Into the Woods.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
so
I think he was a first choice. I think it was sort of a yeah, okay, who else
Yeah.
we got?
Yeah,
this is not. Go ahead.
they obviously want to have a big name attached to it so they can say starring so and so, but like obviously then it got to the point where it's like shit. So
So unlike other cult musicals, this movie did not have some sort of shoestring budget. I mean, like Dick Tracy, this movie also obviously had a massive budget. I mean, and like Roger Rabbit, they kept throwing money at this movie. I mean, technically, I think this movie's beautiful.
It is.
I mean-
it looks amazing.
there
It looks
there are some very
back to-
impressive stuff.
Very all of Back to the Future and a lot of the Zemeckis stuff that was going on in Steven Spielberg. I mean, I digress. But before we jump into the plot and the music, etc., are there any other initial thoughts that you first had when you rewatched or watched Howard the Duck for the first time?
I'll throw one in. So this kind of bespeaks of Howard, the reception that Howard the Duck is. So my DVD copy of Howard the Duck that I watched, I purchased at a thrift store, still in its wrapping. So I actually dug it out of my collection and ripped off the plastic wrap off of it, so it was fresh and new from the thrift store, and
Nice.
put it in the DVD player. So that was fun. I was gonna say, from being an 80s kid and remembering Howard the Duck in the 80s and how it was received at the time, I remember it being sort of like talked about coming up before it was released, and a lot of the stuff was always kind of like, yeah, Howard the Duck's coming out. I don't know what that's gonna be like. That was kind of how it was before. And then when it came out, it was like, what the fuck? Like, this is not anything that we asked for. This is not anything we wanted. What is this? That was kind of the reception of it. And then it was like a bomb in the culture, in pop culture, not just financially, but like culturally. It was like, you talked about that in hushed tones, because it was like, this is what it means to bomb. And I was going to say one other thing when I was going through the trivia was, this was such a bomb that George Lucas, with all of his might, he had to actually sell off the animation division of Lucasfilm. And then that went on to become Pixar.
Huh.
So at least if we hadn't had Howard the Duck, we wouldn't have Pixar. So some good came out of it, besides kind of a somewhat cute, kind of culty, odd movie.
And I do want to talk about the legacy, because you were around then, so you know some of the reception of what was happening then.
I was
I
going
was
to give one more thing about, if I might.
Yeah.
The thing that this reminded me of was the Garbage Pail Kids movie.
Oh God, I love that movie as a kid.
Horrible. I mean,
it was
but this is so
terrible,
much
but it's
better.
great.
Yeah, this is so much better than the Garbage Pail Kids movie, but
Yeah.
I put them
Oh, yeah,
in my
definitely.
brain, they're together.
It kind of has that same feel though, like the way
Yeah.
like the puppets in Garbage Pail Kids, and then the way the puppet of Howard was done. It has that same sort of very that artistic feel to it. Like they look like they were made together.
I can see that.
Exactly, in the same factory, for sure. They were saying that initially the writers were saying that this would have been maybe animated, and I think they should absolutely have gone that route with
I
this.
agree.
An
Oh,
animated version of
absolutely.
this would have been so much better.
They wanted a 1986 summer blockbuster, and they thought this was it. It was not.
No.
No.
Well,
If they had done like the same way they did like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, if they mixed
Yeah, I
like
was
the
gonna
live
say that.
action with
Yeah.
the animation, that would have been interesting. That would have
Yeah.
been a more interesting take in it.
I think that would have been amazing.
I think one of the things about, like, from what I've gathered about like the behind the scenes stuff is they wanted this to have a general blockbustery family friendly kind of vibe in a way with some edge. Like they wanted it to be like Ghostbusters or like Back to the Future or something. Or again, they really like George Lucas at this point had been mostly a producer at this point, but he really didn't want to be like he didn't want his name promoted. He was just like, hey, I've got money. I'll throw money your way to help you get your movie made. But this one, it's like, oh, it's a new sci-fi fantasy adventure film. George Lucas made it, everyone. It's like,
Right.
and I'm sure he's like, no, like I'm just helping my friends, okay? Like, so I think a problem was,
But that's what he did with Labyrinth as well. I mean, he produced Labyrinth, but he, you know, even though he didn't have anything to do with Labyrinth except producing it, it was like, you know, he produced it and had this particular this and this. So I think it was his name was attached to it because, you know, I guess his name represented gold, I guess, in the 80s in terms of money.
Yeah.
Just like Spielberg,
Yeah.
he was
Definitely
literally up there
mentally.
like Spielberg.
Mhm.
But I don't consider, forgive me, the geeks in the fandom, I don't consider George Lucas a Steven Spielberg.
no,
That's a valid opinion, my friend.
Adjacent.
yeah, it's like I think even George Lucas is like, I'm not a great filmmaker. I just know where to point the camera.
Well, so before we get into everything, and you talked about your initial reactions, Helena. So, who else was y'all's initial reactions if this is the first time visiting it, or it's the first time revisiting it recently?
I'll go ahead and say mine. I kind of hinted at it earlier. So I watched it years ago, and like getting ready for this, I rewatched it again. And before I rewatched it, I thought, maybe I jumped on the hate wagon like with everybody because I've gone back and rewatched movies that are quote unquote the worst, and I've watched it and I'm like, I can't call them necessarily good, but the worst. It's like I've seen movies that are morally reprehensible that I would never watch again for $1 million. But Howard the Duck, I watched it again, and the sad stuff is there's something good here. Like there are elements of a good movie here.
Mhm.
But I think it was a too many cooks problem. Like the studio wanted this, the writers wanted this, and of course, years of like, okay, we want it this way. Oh wait, we can't do it that way. Okay, we want it this way. No, we can't do it this way. So it's like it got to the and of course just mishaps on set and just Murphy's Law and everything. And so eventually it just got it. I feel like it probably got to the point where they were like, just get it done so we can get this over with. Hopefully it'll be good. So I think unfortunately it was just bad timing and just unfortunate circumstances because there's something here that could have been really good. Like,
I have my opinion of what caused it to flop, but we'll get to that in the legacy. What about the rest of y'all?
My absolute first reaction to seeing it, seeing like that absolute Ducktopia. Like I don't know what the name of the duck world was, but I'm calling it Ducktopia because that was my Animal Crossing name, like world. So Ducktopia. It was so immersive and like so really well fleshed out. You could tell that like the entire like not really the entire budget, but like a good chunk of it went into like the world building of this crazy duck world. And we don't
And then
even
we only
see
got
it
small
ever again.
glimpses of.
Yeah, we only see the glimpses, but every single one is so highly detailed that it's just crazy. It was so well thought out, and I wish we could have had more time in that world, quite frankly, because of how cool, how foreign, and yet so uncannily similar to like our world it is. Like I loved that. And then completely taken away, and it's like, great, we're in like the grungiest part of the 80s. That's exactly what we wanted to go to.
Cleveland.
Well,
Yeah,
even
and
like
character
Tim
design
Robbins.
too.
Sorry.
No, and then
Like
just
Tim Robbins' character, even like mentioned that like when he was trying to explain like at some point in the movie that how like man evolved from ape, like this like the dominant species ended up being duck. So
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I guess they evolved.
I
So that was
just
like that in that
laughing at that
alternate
part.
universe.
It was just so funny, that part. I love laughing at him because he's like taking it so seriously and so over the top. And like the other guys are like, yeah, whatever.
And Renee?
Oh, like I said before, I was expecting it to be wildly inappropriate, and it was not at all what I expected. But I think it could have been saved either by being 2 movies or with some better editing. Because I think there was like 15 minutes spent on like that plane chase. And there
Mhm.
didn't need to be 15 minutes spent on that plane chase.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And not to mention, like, Howard was not very aesthetically pleasing.
No.
There's something about the eyes, but that was
Nope.
kind of the animatronic style of the 80s too, kind of like that Chuck E. Cheese feel.
Oh my
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So like, it just had a lot going on.
It's
for
your
it.
birthday today.
I would not
Yeah.
want to make. I would want to
Yeah.
make out with Howard the Duck in this form. Yeah,
You would want
I
to.
would
I would not want to
Oh.
because he's so freaky looking. But like Leah Thompson's all ready to jump his bones. So
Well, what was really creepy too about like going back and rewatching this is I absolutely loved this movie as a kid. As I grew up in the '80s, so this was definitely like I was exposed to this at a young age. So this was I always thought it was awesome. But like as most of us do when we go back and watch things that we loved when we were older, we kind of when you learn when you have more information, like the fact that the person in the duck suit was also a kid was also a little kid and like there were scenes where like Leah Thompson was like lying in bed with Howard and those some of those scenes were with the little kid, so I was like that's kind of creepy when you think about it, but
It's the 80s.
it's
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 fine.
Large
Fine.
man.
The kid probably had a key around his neck and had to go home and let himself into his own house.
But I mean, maybe it's just me, but I don't think Howard's creepy. I mean, he's not like the really bad movie Mac and Me. Do you remember Mac and Me?
Oh God,
That's
Mac
another
and
one.
Me.
Put that in the same category as the Garbage Pail Kids, Howard the Duck, Mac and Me, Nuki. I mean, all of those.
By the way, if anyone's ever speaking real quick of like Mac and Me, if anyone's a fan of Paul Rudd, anytime Paul Rudd was ever on, and I see John laughing, so he knows what I'm talking about. Every time Paul Rudd was ever on Conan O'Brien to promote anything he's ever done, when they go to show a clip from his movie, he cuts to a clip of that scene from Mac and Me where he falls off the cliff. So it's so funny, and every time like Conan got pissed, it's like, dude, what the hell?
So I hate that movie. It's terrible.
Yeah,
But
It really is.
it's just McDonald's product placement.
Yeah.
But
literally saved by Coke.
Oh
the
Anyway,
plot,
Howard.
though, I think the plot of this movie, and then we'll get into the most important aspect, music, because that's the music's not really looked at a lot when people think and talk about Howard the Duck. It's almost people don't overlook it. I read YouTube comments sometimes, and people are like, "It might be a bad movie, but the music sure does it," But I think the plot of this movie is original in terms of some interstellar being sucked into our world and trying to survive and make his way. I mean, it's basically like E.T. I mean, how many other interstellar characters get sucked into the world? Garbage Pail Kid, Mac and Me, But I think the plot of this movie is there's not a lot of like climax. But I think that for what it's supposed to be, I don't think this was supposed to be the first one and done. I think this was supposed to introduce audience to Howard and how he got to our world. So in terms of it being like an origin story for Howard, if there was a saga, if there was going to be a trilogy, etc., I think it's pretty cut and dry for a plot. I mean, I don't think it's. I don't know. I don't think it's muted. I don't think it's dull. I think the plot is what it is. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is one of the first instances of there being talk about a multiverse. whereas
Yeah.
the duck world evolved just like our world, except it's a multiverse, which just means that it's a sort of this along the same lines as ours, but it's ducks. So they bring that up in the movie, and that's something that's very present in Marvel now, is the whole concept of multiverse. So maybe
Absolutely.
this
yeah.
kind of kicked it off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that deep, not that deep of a movie,
No.
but it's such beautiful 80s special effects and such beautiful 80s feel to it. I mean, it's so gone. I was about to say Gone with the Wind. What the hell? Because I have a Gone with the Wind tattoo on my arm.
The crimping of the hair. I mean, the 80s fashions and the 80s look and feel of it is very much present. Which I love that kind of like kitsch punk aesthetic of it all, with the sushi diner and stuff like that. It's just, that is such an 80s joke to have a sushi diner. It's just great.
Yeah,
It's
if
definitely
it,
very much a product of its time.
Yes.
yeah, and
Mm.
if it wouldn't have flopped, it could have totally set on the same scale of terms of being like a blockbuster like that future and other blockbusters that were coming around, because it had every recipe to be in the same vein of those massive films.
They
You're
really
right.
thought
I
it was
didn't
going
see
to be the hit of the summer, because it was right after Lucas finished all of the Star Wars, or the three
Mhm.
Star Wars. They really, really did think it was going to be okay.
But it's weird because it's like Marvel just wasn't like in the public consciousness at the time. I mean, it was for people that like comic books, but not in the public. So it's like people knew of like Spider-Man and Superman, but they didn't know like, oh, Howard the Duck, that's a comic book
Yeah,
character.
he was really niche. He came, what was it,
Marvel,
thing or Marsh thing comic?
Swamp
Oh,
Thing?
man. Swamp something or other.
Swamp
It
Thing.
was
Swamp
a thing
Thing.
that walked around the swamps, didn't say anything, and it needed like a supporting cast. And they're
Mhm.
like,
That is
a
actually-
talking duck would be funny. And then all of a sudden it blew up into this. People wanted him to have his own comic. So he did.
Well,
Again,
Swamp Thing, they actually did have a movie they made in the 80s. They actually had Andrea Barbeau was like
Yep.
the
Adrian
main like
Barbeau.
female character in it. Yeah.
Right. Forgot about that movie.
That's a good movie. It's
But
a hell of a good movie.
I don't know. I was not a child of the 80s. I'm not a Marvel fan. I've not seen one Marvel film except Howard the Duck. Don't come for me because I won't answer.
Guardians of the Galaxy. The the three Guardians of the Galaxies.
I think you would like those too, because it's very music heavy. You might even want
yeah.
to end up having this
very
on the
music.
podcast, perhaps, especially with the Howard the
Mm.
Duck tie-in at the end of the one.
Well, the
Absolutely.
thing is, I was gonna say is that Marvel, from what I've known, is that a particular figure that I'm obsessed with, Marvel comics weren't big in the 80s.
No.
And there's a point where they were struggling financially, and Michael Jackson wanted to buy Marvel because he was so cash heavy. He wanted to buy Marvel. He wanted to buy, and God bless Michael, because he wanted to buy his way into a lot of stuff, and people let him on. I think a lot of lawyers let him on to think he could actually buy Marvel comics. So that would have been really interesting. Because I don't know. I mean, did kids read comics like they did? Did they read comics in the 80s? Was it a flash, or was it something big that kids did in the 80s?
We were poor, so we didn't have any comics. So that's just my experience.
I mean, there wasn't the internet, and there was books and comics and movies and the Disney afternoon, I guess. Well, no, that wasn't in the 80s. That was in the 90s. Yeah, comics were big.
Comics were definitely big in the 80s. They're definitely, I don't think they're not definitely weren't as mainstream as say they are now. But comics were definitely fairly big in the 80s for sure.
I think the question I'm asking is, it's sort of like Helena's talked about, like Dick Tracy. Everything comes full circle with these folk musicals. Dick Tracy, of course, had Warren Beatty and Madonna and Stephen Sondheim. You had and Disney. So you had all these recipes for success. But the problem is nobody in the 90s knew who Dick Tracy was. So I guess that's the question I'm leading into, is like, was Howard known in the 80s? Was it some sort of obscure character that they had to reintroduce to audiences? Or was he known on?
No,
I
he
don't
was
think
neat.
I don't think he was known, but he wasn't nearly as known. I think it was also too because around the same time there was a lot of like weird like monster movies coming out. Like you had or like you had like Garbage Pail Kids. You had like that's there's a lot. I think they're looking just for an interesting like character. And I guess
Right.
Howard would have been like an interesting enough character where they probably assumed that, hey, you had all these like crazy like monsters and like characters that they thought maybe like kids would gravitate toward it, even though it really wasn't a kid
Yeah.
character per se.
It's like a
Um,
gimmick monster movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like again, they're trying to go for that Ghostbusters vibe and stuff like that. Like they're trying to bring in the, the monster at the end, stuff like that, possessing somebody, and
Gremlins.
Yeah,
I
even
mean-
the graphics were similar.
mhm.
I mean, and
you also had like Ninja Turtles came out in the 80s. Like you had like the Ninja Turtles movie, and that was like the same like thing with like the character people and like the animatronic suits and stuff.
That
I
was a
think they
little
were just
later.
trying to go for that kind of look.
I mean, but I don't know. I'm a defender of Howard. I'm a defender of everything, apparently. I'm even a defender of freaking the Apple and Grace.
The weird thing is we bring up. I didn't want to bring this up, but like bringing up Guardians of the Galaxy, it is weird how the first Guardians and Howard kind of have a similar plot. Like in the first Guardians, young Peter Quill, Star-Lord, Chris Pratt's character, gets sucked up and taken to this not other universe, but this other world, and basically he has to learn to survive.
Absolutely.
So,
It's
so
like
yeah,
Marvel's One Trick Pony, maybe? Oh, is that what you just
And-
said? I'm kidding.
And Ollie was really funny too. Is like speaking of like the newer Marvel movies, even it's a very blink and you'll miss it. But at the end of Endgame, when you see all the different portals opening
Yeah.
up and characters stepping through, Howard is in there. It's for a split second, but Howard is in there. You see him like running with the gun in his hands,
yeah.
Mhm.
which I thought was pretty cool. And the fact that like it's voiced by Seth Green.
Yeah.
He's voiced by Seth Green in the Marvels like little things. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the whole plot, and it's very a la Star Wars and Back to the Future and all these great high fantasy sci-fi films. So it had all the recipes of success. Because when I watch Howard the Duck or rewatch Howard the Duck, my mind always gravitates Back to the Future. Not only because of the Leah Thompson connection, because it still has that feel, the laser and the outer space and the grittiness in certain scenes and the beautiful color, neon colors in certain scenes. I think aesthetically it's beautiful. So I'm just trying to wrap my mind around, and I've done a lot of reading about it, but I'm still trying to wrap my mind around why they chose Howard. It's sort of the same thing of why Warren Beatty chose Dick Tracy, but he was a fan of the Dick Tracy comics. And so that's kind of like the movie The Shadow that came out in the 90s with one of the Ball brothers, I don't know, and Tim Curry. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever saw
I know.
Vaguely remember that one. Yeah.
That was
People
a
were like-
follow on to Dick Tracy. That was like a fast follow. Like we want to try to, since Dick Tracy is popular, we're going to do The Shadow, we're going to do The Rocketeer, we're going to do these other ones and try to follow on.
It was funny. It's also I don't know if anyone ever saw that it was from like the early 90s. It was that movie Darkman.
Yep.
Dark.
Because that was
Darkman.
that was actually made by Sam Raimi. That was like right before or right after Army of Darkness, where he wanted to do The Shadow.
Right.
He originally but like it would the rights were already owned by somebody else for The Shadow, like was bought up by somebody else. So he created Darkman as he wanted to make a superhero movie. So that was his take on superhero movies, was Darkman.
And
which
Darkman was a
honestly-
follow on of Batman.
Yes.
Mm.
Mhm.
But
I
I'm
think
so go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I think the reason why Howard was made was because it goes back to Warren Beatty and Dick Tracy, is that George Lucas and the husband and wife team who made it were fans of Howard the Duck. And, like, they were all comic book fans, and they had for years tried to get the rights to it and try to get it made. And so this was very much like, we finally have this. We finally have the rights for it. We're finally going to get it made. So let's go ahead and make it. So I think it was
and it's probably felt like shit when you not only do you love a property, you've got some passion for it. Like Warren Beatty to this day, God bless Warren Beatty to this day. He's still trying to get a sequel to Dick Tracy made. He wants Warren Beatty, but I mean, he wants to play Dick Tracy, but it's kind of like, he invested his own money and then he produced, and it's the same thing with, I guess, with George Lucas, if that piece of trivia is fact, if that, you love a particular property and you want to introduce it to the masses and stuff, you feel not only a sense of ownership over it, but you feel a sense of responsibility to do it justice and to do it right.
Mm.
And so maybe that's why it hurt him so much when it was released and it became this. There's so many references of Howard the Duck in TV shows in the 80s and the 90s around this time of the film flopping. It has to feel like a punch in the gut. And I don't want to focus too much on the negative because I do want to get into positive aspects. But when you have like me or any of us really, like a property we grew up with, we're like, oh, it needs more. It needs more recognition. And we have the finances and we're in a particular position where we want to produce it and we want to direct it, etc. We feel a sense of due to it, a sense of loyalty, and also like a sense of purpose to sort of get it out there. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell, like I said, there's a lot of love that was put into this movie, a lot of care, a lot of expense. I mean, no expense was spared, and they really cared about this. But I think they also lost sight of, is it marketable at the same time?
They didn't really try to market it too hard. I think, if I remember correctly, the most they had was like, there was a number you could call, and Howard the Duck would like talk about the movie or something. And then there was a weird commercial
that the public would want to go and see this, I guess is what I mean, more than actual marketing is like, yeah. We should have done a little study into like, are people really going to be interested in this? I mean, right now it's like every movie is focus grouped within an inch of its life, but I feel like they didn't do this for Howard the Duck.
One of the weird things they would do for marketing it is they wouldn't show Howard the Duck. Like you'd see like his silhouette, or you'd see like the back of his head, or like there was like this big billboard in Hollywood that was like an egg with like his beak sticking out with a cigar. But yeah, they wouldn't show, and they would in every type of promo material or interview, they would try to make you think Howard's a real person. It's like they were like, "What's it like working with Howard?" Oh, Howard, he's quite the character.
But one of the early posters, you don't even see Howard. You just see Tim Robbins, and you see Leah Remini, and not Leah Remini, Leah Thompson. What the hell? I saw Renee's background, and I thought about Leah Remini for Scientology.
Is abounding right now.
But yeah, I saw one of the early posters. In one of these posters, you don't even really see. If you can see it, you can't really even see Howard's face. And in one of the posters that they released, you don't see Howard. You only see Leah and Tim, and you see them being like electrocuted, and you see Howard's shadow or silhouette. Now,
because Howard is disturbing looking.
I thought that, but the part of me. The whole like we are the world part of me thought that they wanted to leave some mystery for it because they thought it was so cutting edge that the audience would be like, oh my god.
If they had put that on a poster in the 80s, people would have been like, oh hell no. I'm sorry.
Well, it's the same thing. Like if you look at I mean, in the 80s too, everybody generally knew what the Turtles looked like, but in the original like poster for the Ninja Turtles movie, you didn't really see their faces either. You just saw their eyes poking out from under like the sewer grate. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, Ninja Turtles, I guess, was more popular at the time than Howard anyway. But it's the same kind of idea where I guess they wanted to show like just enough to kind of be like, ooh, what's that?
Well, do you guys remember recently, like they did a Sonic the Hedgehog movie and they showed it on the
Oh my god.
and everyone just went ape shit because it was so wrong. But I feel like that would have been the same thing with Howard the Duck. It's like people would have looked at that and gone like, no.
It's not the same as a CG character. Like I don't think you could have gone back and be like, okay, we gotta redo the puppet again.
Yeah, another $5 million puppet. It's like, no, we're not gonna make you another puppet.
Well, at least it would be like in terms of like animation wise, it would be easier doing a puppet instead of like rendering like an entire movie with a different model.
That's true.
I still think it would have been a great animated feature though.
That would,
And-
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
But
What-
if they were to like redo like Howard the Duck or do a brand new Howard the Duck, even if they did it as like a TV show or something, and they kind of did it in the style that they did with Sonic, where it was like a CG character in like a real world, like that would aesthetically I think would look a lot more pleasing
Oh, yeah.
than
I just
because like they actually were over at Hulu. They were supposed to do a Howard the Duck cartoon that was supposed to be produced by Kevin Smith, but Hulu ended up like I guess pulling the plug on it and never ended up going into like production, which sucks.
It'd
So
be
that
a
would've been
perfect
fun.
like 8 episode short season, like Howard the Duck thing on Netflix. That would have been perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, like you or they kind of do like they're doing with like the Marvel shows on Disney Plus. Like do like a short like a 6 episode like mini series just to kind of see how people would like the character, reintroduce the character back to the public.
If they could do it for Harley Quinn, because that shit is wild. If they could
There
do
you
it for
go.
Harley Quinn, they could do it for Howard the Duck.
I'm just imagining like if it was made into an animated movie in the 80s or 70s or something like that. I'm just imagining the only person I think could have properly done it is maybe like Ralph Bakshi or something
I
like
was
that.
going to say 2 words, Ralph Bakshi was going to be my saying about that.
Who
Then
did
there
That or Don Bluth would have been good to do it in the 80s.
He was too Christian, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Well,
too pure.
yeah, no, of course, but like, but that style that of his, like,
Yeah.
that I think would have worked good for like the grittiness of Howard.
I don't know.
Northwest Rock Roll.
Before we move on, we're going to move on now, but I think Don Bluth's done some pretty dark animated films.
I
Mhm.
mean,
Dark,
he did this, The Secret of Nymph, and that was
Right.
a pretty gritty, like dark movie for its time.
Yeah.
Although, but he didn't have boobs in it, so
Yeah, it
Did
wasn't
not
set.
have
None of
boobs.
them
We
were
didn't, we didn't see
sexual
we didn't see
anything at
Mrs.
all.
Frisbee.
no, no
Nope.
topless Mr. Frisbee.
No, thank you.
No.
But the reason that I had all y'all here today, all y'all,
Oh,
is
y'all.
I wanted to look at this from a different angle than it's ever been looked at. I consider this movie to be a musical, and I consider the music in this movie to be beautiful, well written, and I consider the music in this movie to drive the plot. So to me, this is a cult musical because cult, of course, doesn't necessarily mean it has a huge cult following, but Howard is slowly getting a cult following. But it's one of those so bad it's good movies. But to me, the main thing that I love about this movie and that it's so endearing to me is the movie. Is the music and the way that it's composed and the way that it's shot. Now, you've got 5 songs in the film, and they're all written by Thomas Dolby, who's famous for writing the song She Blinded Me with Science from Weird Science. But what people don't know is that he also wrote the music for Rockula, some of the music for Rockula, the cult musical Rockula. He's in Rockula. And he wrote the songs for Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest.
Huh. Did not know
So,
that.
Telling so
So-
much.
so Toxic Love.
Is
Toxic
amazing.
Love. So, I
Oh.
mean,
Sexy pollution song.
Podcast.
Yeah, Thomas Dolby, I'm fascinated by his involvement with this. I would be interested to know how he got involved with Howard the Duck, because he did this in the same year that he did the movie Gothic, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, which is it's a horror movie about Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, Mary Shelley spending a weekend on drugs on an island, and her ending up writing Frankenstein out of that. And it's this insane movie directed by Ken Russell. And so he does like Howard the Duck, which is like a fun kind of happy movie, and then he does this weird ass like kind of arty horror movie the same exact year. I mean, it was like one after the other. It's kind of amazing.
Well,
Shows
I'm done. I gotta go look this movie up.
but so the music in this is composed by someone who is a very prolific and underrated songwriter. I don't know where Weird Science came out.
Oingo
Pardon?
Boingo. Weird Science was Oingo Boingo.
Oh, then who he composed?
Blinded me with science.
That's not from Weird Science. I apologize.
No.
But yeah, he composed that song. But I don't know what year that came out.
Blinded Me with Science, I think, was like 83, and then Weird Science as a song came out in 85, because I'm like the world's biggest Oingo Boingo fan. So I'll give you anything Oingo Boingo, but yeah.
Boingo Boingo. Always tie
Oh,
she
oh,
sign.
Danny Elfman.
1982, she blinded me with science.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was very early.
But it's so interesting that he went on from being that really weird niche songwriter to then being a songwriter for films. And I really would like to. I got his email address, but I emailed him, so hopefully, I'll get him eventually because I connected with the guy who was on my Rockula episode, who leads the Rockulite. They call themselves the Rockulites.
I love that.
Mhm.
But
If you have Thomas Dolby on, I'll put makeup on.
and I'll put a Dolly Parton wig on.
You should.
No, I'll put a Leah Thompson wig.
Yeah, there you
Crimp
go.
crimp your hair. Crimp your hair.
I'll be
You guys
I'll
crimp
be
your beards. We'll be fine.
I'll be Beverly. But it's so interesting how he became involved in this. And he wrote the songs. There's 4 songs in the film, but there's 5 because Thomas Dolby actually sings one of the songs in the film. So you have Hunger City, which is when Howard arrives in Beverly and Cherry Bomb, which is a really weird name. Beverly and Cherry Bomb are singing Hunger City. And it's when, Howard's crashes into Earth and he crashes on the women's motorcycle gang called Satan Sluts, which I love.
That's a great name.
Mhm.
And
I
then
want a jacket.
there's the beautiful song. Oh yes, I want those jackets.
Ladies, that can be your next Eddie jacket.
Absolutely. Satan
There you
slut.
go.
Saint slots.
With a little
But-
duck underneath of it with horns.
And
Clearly.
there's a really beautiful song that I listen to literally every y'all. Don't Turn Away, when Beverly's singing it, and it's like, when this world. Yeah. Anyway, and then Howard goes into the bar and he looks at her, and they sort of and he's like enamored with her, and I love that song. Don't Turn Away. And then she's like, this is too depressing, and she sings It Don't Come Cheap.
Yeah.
And when she invites Howard back to her house, Thomas Dolby sings a version of Don't Turn Away. Don't Turn Away. And of course, at the end, you have the song Howard the Duck when he's like moonwalking on stage while she's playing on the guitar.
Yep, and then he has a guitar solo.
Yes. But
His
to
own
me,
little special
His own little tiny
mini
Howard the Duck guitar.
It was
Yeah.
so cute. I love that part.
but I sent y'all this extended musical sequence of it. People don't talk about this music enough. The music in this film is so good.
I agree. The music is pretty phenomenal. Like every song, I enjoyed every single song that I heard.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it constitutes a musical. I feel like it's a
Uh-oh.
little more. I know,
Oh,
I
fighting
know.
words.
Dissenting opinion, sorry, but like I don't know if it constitutes a musical, but I can really appreciate where you're coming from with how it drives the whole movie. That like music is the point of it. But I don't know if that a musical it makes. Does that make sense?
Is it a rock opera though?
I'd classify it more of a rock opera than a musical.
Eh, I can definitely see how it fits into the musical genre and stuff like that. And music does play a big part in it, not just with like the songs referencing it, but obviously music is a connector that's used to help connect Howard and Leah Thompson, Beverly. Yeah, it's like
He
obvious
becomes
because
their
like
manager.
yeah, well,
Absolutely.
but also we see at the beginning, as we see Howard's apartment, which has a very, it almost reminds like with the way they shoot it and everything, it almost reminds me of that scene from Who Framed Roger Rabbit where they do the tour of
Absolutely.
Eddie's desk and stuff like that, his
Absolutely.
brother's desk.
That's good. That's good.
But like we see like hints of the world, which is duck puns galore. But also we see like, we see the answering machine where it's like, Howard, it's your mother, give me a call. But I forget if that's how she sounded. That's just how I do every mother voice.
Yeah.
But also we see like, the album of his band and whatever. What was it, Howard and the I forget the band's group or
I
the
want to say
group's
the
name.
Mallards, but I know it's not right. But
Yeah,
But
it's how. But we see like the album that they made, and obviously music has a very special place in Howard's heart because he has that scene with Beverly. And he talks about like I dropped out. I was going to be this musician, but then I had to get a respectable job. And so obviously music forms a connection between him and Beverly, and he wants to help them and stuff like that. And so I can definitely see how this counts as a musical, not just with the song pieces, but with how music is in a way is used to help connect the two main characters.
Yeah,
I think
and I
if you go back and you cut out that plane, you cut out about 10 or 15 minutes of that plane chase, then it's a musical.
There you go.
Yeah, I know the damn
I'm
plane
with
scene.
you.
Just
They were
listen-
so turned for that plane scene. They were like, we have to show everything. It was expensive. It took all this time. We had to land on a truck. That was hard.
always up, always down, always up, always down. It's like, come on.
We're getting our money's worth.
If they kept that
Get a big
whole
money's
flight
worth.
scene, I think it could be considered a musical. That flight scene is so long, 15 minutes. I know Renee has a lot of feelings about the flight.
I have so many feelings about that damn plane scene.
I think I left the room. I think I
They
actually
forgot how
left the
to
room.
edit things and cut stuff out. That's almost what it feels like about Howard the Duck. It's like they forgot, oh, we can cut that. You know.
Yeah, I
They
think
made
some
that.
editing it would have
That-
been a lot smoother.
Yeah, it's a 2-hour movie. I mean, it's an hour and 51 minutes. So you take out that 10, 15-minute chunk. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I-
could
Put in another
not-
musical number.
There you go.
I think it's
I think they could have easily played into like the musical aspect, but also playing into like the cheesy sci-fi stuff part, like throw in some like Little Mermaid-esque kind of stuff of like, Beverly's voice is needed. Like Beverly's voice help transcends the galaxy or whatever. And it's like, we need your voice to transcend to bring other creatures or whatever. So it's like just play into it. Like if you're gonna be silly,
But you think the weird thing, the reason they never marketed this as a almost, if you think about it, music was so big in the 80s, the rise with MTV. Almost every 80s film had some sort of musical performance. Movies that weren't even musicals. For
Yeah.
instance, my favorite movies, Once Bitten, with Jim Carrey, has
Oh
two.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that dumb movie.
I love Once Bitten. He's got that song. So when there's like the vampirist and his girlfriend are like dueling over him, and then
Yeah.
the song Once Bitten when that prostitute's walking the tiger on Hollywood Boulevard. Whatever. I digress. But like I think music is such an important part of all 80s movies, regardless of
School
music.
had Oingo Boingo in it, doing Dead Man's Party.
what
It's
movie.
weird.
Remember
It's
the
weird.
movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oingo Boingo shows up and does Dead Men's Party in total during that movie in a party scene. It's great.
But it's probably because, like, in the 80s, musicals were not cool. As we've
Yeah.
talked about, 80s musicals were not cool in the 80s. So almost every, besides The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, every 80s movie musical that we know and love flopped in terms of cult. Like Grease 2, The Apple, they kept trying to replicate and duplicate the success of the 70s musicals, etc. Teen Witch wasn't even supposed to be a musical. They just adding songs in. They're like, we need a rap. We need a song on a. We
One
need that.
other thing that was very important in the 80s was also to spawn that single to get on MTV.
Mm.
That's why a lot of like I think the video from Back to School, they took Dead Man's Party and they did a music video for it, but it was all shots from Back to School. So it's like you had to tie in the song that's from the movie into an MTV video to get airplay on MTV.
Yeah, it's like
And-
you look at if you look at like the Oscars of like the 80s, like the best original songs, you'll see a lot of pop musicians getting nominated and winning. Lionel Richie has an Oscar. Who else? Phil
But
Collins
did-
was nominated multiple times and all that
Did
kind
the
of
same
stuff.
thing with the Batman movie. You had Prince's song in the
Mhm.
Batman movie, like because
Party Man.
yeah, and also too like another good one that's like I would consider a musical as well. That's from the 80s. Is even Coming to America. Coming to America was very music driven as well.
Yes, it was.
But this movie had a single release. So it's funny that you said that, Helena, because this movie actually had, oh no, Renee's disappeared. She's disappeared to the void.
She's in the
Been
void.
sucked to another universe.
I'm back. Sorry.
She went to Zootopia.
This movie actually had a single released. Don't Turn Away.
Hmm.
So, and the thing about it is, Leah Thompson does not get credit for her voice. She all of these songs in the film, and they actually, even in production, did an interview that said she never knew day to day if they were going to dub her in the final movie because they were like they didn't know if her voice was good enough. But her voice is bad at the movie,
Yeah, her
That's
voice is
amazing. They
I
actually
was
let
gonna
her
say
sing.
she's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It fits. It fits well.
Cool.
and she never knew day to day if they were going to dub her in the final product. And she had to tell him, I can sing, I can sing. And I don't know, I'm not a massive Leah Thompson fan. I think she's beautiful and wonderful, but I don't ever done anything else in terms of singing after this or before this.
No, I think this was kind of it for her, but she did it. She tried her hand at it, and she did good.
She did great. And it's like she makes that character. Her character is very the way that she acts with Beverly is a very unusual choice, acting choice. The way she plays very like, the dialogue's very strange anyway. One of my favorite lines in our movies from Leah Thompson, she's like, "Are you saying I should take the animal kingdom, Ducky?" When she's, thinking about fucking the duck, basically.
Yeah.
Which everybody should try that scene, but I mean, whatever.
Mhm.
But the whole point is that the music in this movie is great, and it's
Yeah.
written by a prolific songwriter who has ties to other cult musicals. Also, another cult musical connection. One of this is so bizarre. One of the girls who's Cherry Bomb is actually one of the twins in Grease 2. One of the
Oh, I
cheerleaders
saw
Huh.
that.
in Grease
Yeah.
2.
I'll
And
be-
they are the younger sisters of Katie Sagal from Married
Mhm.
with Children.
Huh.
Yep.
So were the Doublemint girls, the twins in the Doublemint commercial. That was Katie Seagal's sister.
Huh.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, it's the same girls because these girls are in Grease 2, and one of them's in Howard the Duck. And one of them was in Flashdance. So again, the whole connection with cult musicals, you've got the Rockula connection, you've got the Grease 2 connection, you've got the Ferngully, the Last Rainforest connection. So
We
you
need
have,
to- I
pardon?
think we need to. I think we need to retire the 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon and do 7 Degrees of Rocky Horror.
There you go. 7 Degrees of Thomas Dolby.
7
But
Degrees
you
of Tim
know what?
Curry.
You know what? Okay, I love the Rocky Horror Picture. I might like Shock Treatment more than the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but don't come for me, Rocky people. I love Rocky Horror. It is the queen of the cult musical, but the king of the rock musical that came before Rocky Horror is Phantom of the Paradise. That
Mhm.
really the
Fuck
way
yeah.
for a picture show
Paul Williams, man.
because my friends in Toronto,
Oh,
my friends in Winnipeg who I interviewed, they're the ones that do Phantom Palooza in Winnipeg. Phantom actually was the first cult musical to have shadow casting
oh.
and to have like callbacks and things like that.
So
And it was
fun.
so Phantom really I don't think the Rocky Horror universe and the Phantom universe ever coincided except with Shock Treatment with Jessica Harper being, but I don't
Yeah,
think
no.
they're cognizant
With
and aware.
Hades.
I think they both were just onto something that had never been done before. Rocky Horror came at the right time.
Yeah.
Hades
Okay.
has a point. Go for it, girl.
Absolutely. So it's kind of funny that you bring up Phantom of the Paradise. I've never heard that one until I learned that they're going to do that at the next RockyCon next year
Mhm.
at YinzCon. And I'd never heard of it. And apparently now I'm getting all this information like suddenly, like within the past month about Phantom of the Paradise.
Have
So
you seen
clearly
it?
we all have to watch that very soon.
Yep. It's glorious.
It
Yeah.
is. It's definitely it is getting the recognition it needs in the USA now, but in Canada, it's never closed. It's
In
continuing.
one town in Canada.
What?
Not even Canada. It's just the one little city. It was like it blew up into like a summer blockbuster.
And my friends in Canada, Gloria Dignazzi, they're the ones that organize screenings in Phantom Palooza.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
I know the Buffalo Rocky cast likes to shadow cast Phantom a lot. Like they're doing it in October soon.
Mhm.
It was funny. Speaking of like the Buffalo Rocky Horror cast, like if you ever see because they just did Phantom production of it this past October. If you go up and look up their Instagram or go on their Facebook, I
Yeah.
actually made their Phantom helmet that they use
Oh,
in their
nice.
production. So
Nice.
actually, so I have a 3D printer at home, and I made their Phantom helmet for them.
Not
Very
all
cool.
cult
Because I
musical.
really want a Phantom helmet really badly. It's
Me
a goal
too.
of my life.
I'm actually trying to look for a picture of it. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I posted it online somewhere. I'll have to find it.
Not only are cult musicals incestuous, but cult musical fans all over the world are incestuous. We're all interconnected
Mhm.
some, which is
Absolutely.
which is
Mhm.
but the music in this, I don't know if we'll ever get a Howard the Duck screening. Hopefully has anyone ever seen a Howard the Duck screening anywhere pop up?
Not that I know of.
I want to
There
say
is over in Pennsylvania, there's like I forget the name of that, the Mahoney Drive-In. They are like this drive-in out in PA where they show 35 millimeter cuts of films like all the time. And they did do a showing of it was like a multi-part. It was like Howard the Duck, and it was I think like Ninja Turtles or something like that. It did like a double showing of it, and I didn't go, but there are like certain like the like people that like specialize in like cult like showings of cult movies where they do showings of Howard.
Very nice.
I
And
think Portland did it back in 2015, so I need to talk to them about doing it again because it's about time.
and we need the soundtrack re-released on vinyl. I don't know.
That'd be cool.
I think the soundtrack finally came on CD, but it deserves. I mean, those songs are so good, and that leads us into the last part of the show. Now, it has a positive. So something positive has come from this, in connection to Lee. I don't know if you know about what's happened with her trying to resurrect Howard, but let's talk about the legacy. So obviously, we don't have to shy away from this. This movie became extremely, extremely infamous to the point where even people who don't know Howard the Duck know of Howard the Duck. So, do y'all want to add tidbits or any observations about what happened to this gem of a movie when it came out?
How
I think-
absolutely disgusting Jeffrey Jones is. It's like his
Sure.
inner beast really came out on film with all of that nasty makeup and disgusting horror. Like
Mhm.
it was just amazing.
I loved
Just
how the end you just
absolute
have that like weird
disgustingness.
little fringe
With
of
the
hair.
hair. It's like he's from oh goodness, what's that sci-fi show called?
Like
Babylon
V.
5.
Okay, Babylon 5.
Yeah.
He's also growing like a
Hair guy.
Stegosaurus back, which I actually really enjoyed watching the movie. I thought that was fascinating.
Mhm.
But when the movie came out, obviously, and for those who are in the 80s can attest to this, I mean, it was almost a running gag. And it was almost like people laughed about how bad it flopped.
It was like you joke about that on Letterman. Ha ha ha. That's the kind of thing.
Absolutely.
it
Yeah,
was.
that Yesterworld video I talked about, they brought up the aftermath of it, and they played a couple clips of like shows making punchlines about it, like Animaniacs did a punchline about it, and they played a clip of the Golden Girls, which is like,
Are you going to be very much longer?
Not now, Dorothy. This man is still very down about his financial situation. He was one of the principal backers of Howard the Duck.
Were around in the 80s. Do you think that critics had more power than they do now? Like if critics knighted a film, it had more opportunity for success, and if they lambasted a film, audiences paid attention. Because I feel now really don't pay attention to what
Yeah.
critics.
Well, in the 80s, you didn't have the internet. So it's like now you can get a vast array of opinions on a film or like an aggregator where it's like everyone is rating the film and there's like an overall rating that's from thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Whereas before you just had like Siskel and Ebert saying yay or nay. It was very like Roman Colosseum.
It was them, and then like, there was like Gene Shalit and stuff. You only had like a select few voices that were basically telling you
Maybe
what's
6
good, what's
famous
not.
critics. Yeah, I mean, maybe like 10 critics max.
Growing
in
up, I knew
culture
Siskel and
and
Ebert, and that was all we needed to know in my family's household.
So mean. I remember like getting the newspaper, and like the movies would have like a 3-star or a 2-star or 4-star.
Mhm.
And I think like I'm glad that people are now I call them couch critics, like people are like armchair critics. Everybody in the internet critiques everything, so it's actually gotten worse. But I think movie critics had way too much power in the 80s and the 90s to where audiences wouldn't even give it a chance if the critics lambasted it. And I think that might have been happened with Duck.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Also, the fact that I think partial of that, but also partially they just didn't market it that well.
Mhm.
Like one of the things, like, and again, referring to the Yesterworld video, again, I highly recommend you watch it. It's just a fascinating video. He plays a clip from a critic. I don't know who this critic is. I think he was a local critic, and he brings up how, like, look, hey, I'm here to talk about Howard the Duck. I show you a clip of it, but they didn't provide me with any clips, so I just have to describe it to you. And I think that may be because that's usually an omen of like a bad movie or a movie that's going to get lambasted badly, is if they don't provide you clips.
You're right.
Like they can play up like, oh, we don't want to spoil anything, but it's like, well, you can't even give us a clip of like character 1 talking to character 2 or something like that. So I think partial of that. I don't think, but at the same time, I think if people really wanted to see a movie, they still would have seen a movie like, we keep referencing the Ninja Turtles. Siskel and Ebert, the famous Siskel and Ebert, they hated Ninja
I
Turtles.
hated everything. It was good.
But I will defend them and say that when they liked the movie, they really liked the movie. But like Ninja Turtles, like Ebert hated it especially for some reason, which that man also liked Cop and a Half. So, but Ninja Turtles was still a massive hit, and I think a part of that was because the cartoon was around, the comics were around, and kids want to see Ninja Turtles. Meanwhile, with Howard the Duck, it's like, oh, I think I saw his comic on the shelf. Like,
If there had been a Saturday morning cartoon, would it have been more?
Yeah.
Well, also too, Howard wasn't like wasn't a mainstream name at the time. Like,
No.
like you said, like a Ninja Turtles at the time was huge because the cartoon was going on and everything, and it was a comic first, obviously before it was a cartoon, but it was like the cartoon really kind of like picked it up. And same thing, you had like other like the Real Ghostbusters, you had that going on at the time as well. So you had so that was an extension of that. But like you said, Howard wasn't like a mainstream name, so no, I think that also played a part in it. Like he was an oddball. It was just like if they did like when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, Guardians of the Galaxy when James Gunn did Guardians of the Galaxy, that was a very unknown property. Like it was known, like they were out there, but the Guardians were not like a household name, like say Iron Man or like Captain America. But it's all in how it's marketed. Like the way they marketed that movie was insane. And again, like same thing, like like you said before, music was a huge part of that. So I think that also, and so it played a lot with the nostalgia of like playing those old songs.
But I've told people about, I'm like, have you ever seen Howard the Duck? They're like, no, it's terrible. But I was like, have you ever even seen it? They're like, no, I've never seen it.
So how do you know it's terrible?
Exactly.
When I tell my children.
What?
That's what I tell my children. If you're more mature than a 3 and a 7-year-old, maybe watch the film first and then make your decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody that I've talked to about Howard the Duck, some people have been like, yeah, I've seen it. But I'm like, have you ever seen Howard the Duck? They're like, oh, that's a horrible movie. I'm like, but have you actually ever seen it? They're like, no, I heard it's bad. But I'm like,
culturally know that it's horrible is how you say that.
Yeah.
Like Showgirls.
Actually know.
I think, it deserves recognition. And then I want people to remove their ideas that Howard's so bad. I personally don't consider it a bad movie. It might be cheesy, but I find it very endearing.
I could see that. I think it's a movie that had potential. Like I think if you give it, I think there is potential for Howard the Duck, like doing this kind of cool rock centered, like have him be the agent or whatever, while he's also like, I don't know, give it like a like a kind of edgy Hanna-Barbera vibe to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I did.
Like give it to like, again, like, an easy person to say, but like James Gunn, like have Howard be the cigar chomping, martini drinking manager, and have him and his band, like, I don't know, stopping alien forces or something, while also having like rock numbers in the show or whatever.
But what's
Like I said,
unusual,
if they took the Howard that was like portrayed in Guardians of the Galaxy and did reintroduce that version of Howard, I think it would do extremely well.
I
Mhm.
agree.
Super.
But retro, it would be campy and retro and also Marvel. So it would have three
Yeah.
things going for it.
but I don't
With-
think they should shy away from this Howard the Duck, because this Howard the Duck is always going to be ingrained with that name and that legacy. And that's why the legacy is Leah Thompson actually has come full circle with this. And she's offered to write and direct the sequel to Howard the Duck, or she's offered recently to write and direct the new Howard the Duck. And she keeps saying that Disney's like, we're going to get to it. They've got plans. But she's actually embraced it at Comic-Con
Nice.
event she's had, that she wears the Howard the Duck jacket, and she really wants to be involved with Howard the Duck. She's really, and that's she's come full circle, and I'm really glad that, sometimes people come full circle with these quote unquote flops. Like Jessica Harper came first full circle with Shock Treatment.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Berkley came full circle with Showgirls. Leah Thompson came full circle with Howard the Duck. And I think it's great when celebrities are able to take their power back.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to see what she could do with it in terms and having her involved with it.
Absolutely.
I was going to point
or
out,
even if they did like some sort of like how they a lot of times they'll do like the legacy sequels and stuff. Like even if they did like a new Howard the Duck today, but they referenced her character from the original movie, so it kind of had that. It's new, but it also established that connection to the original. That would kind of be interesting if they did that as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if they did a series, they do like the multiverse episode where Seth Green Howard meets 80s Howard and stuff like
that'd
that.
be cool.
Meta.
That would be awesome.
Very meta. Yep.
And they
Yeah.
and they do like a cool pass of like, hey, you looking good. Hey, thanks. You're looking good too.
Your eyes
And-
are kind of weird. Yeah.
One of those
Talk about how strange.
Howard.
It'll be like
Yeah.
the Loki moment where they have all the various like versions of Howard the
Yeah.
Duck like
Yes.
talking in one scene. It's like
I love it.
you have like the puppet Howard, you have the animated Howard.
Like everywhere, everything all at once kind
Yeah.
of thing.
And then you just have a duck. Just a
Yep.
duck.
And then just a duck
Yep.
that has like a little tiny cigar in its bill, like a real duck.
And everything negative leads to positive in terms of stuff. The only reason that Leah Thompson took the role in one of my favorite movies, Some Kind of Wonderful, is because as soon as Howard failed, she's like, I need to get into another movie. And so she
Yeah.
only took the John Hughes movie, Some Kind of Wonderful, because of Howard the Duck. But now she's really embracing it. If you look at her socials on Instagram, she's got art of Howard the Duck.
Well, same
Yeah.
thing too. Like when she was doing conventions and stuff, appearances, she never had Howard the Duck stuff on her tables. But now when she does like fan conventions and stuff, like like one of the last times, like it was at Monster Mania. It's like a convention near mine in Hades area. Like last time she was there, she had a bunch of Howard the Duck stuff on her table. So it was kind of cool, like you said, seeing them now embrace that when they used to kind of shun it.
But either two things that you could do. You could purposely always evade something, or you can embrace it. And I think by embracing a bad movie, quote unquote, the guy who played Howard the Duck, I think he said he gets more fan mail for that than anything he's ever done. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of power in embracing something. And I know I've already mentioned this on every goddamn episode. So please, y'all need to restrict me on this movie next, okay? But like Elizabeth Berkley embracing Showgirls and ending, she does Comic-Con appearances now, and she has Showgirls merchandise, and she went to the LA cemetery where they had funny enough, where they had the Showgirls screening, and she went like, I love you, darlings, and she's like my nails, and like, so I think with that, it's like there's lots of power, and it's like fuck you, Siskel and Ebert, fuck you, all these people. Sorry, I'm on a rant now, but like,
Oh, well, everyone is fuck you, Siskel and Ebert these days because everyone's like, I love this Friday the 13th movie, etc. So it's like it's sort of like it's come around to being where Siskel and Ebert are now the villains, whereas before they were the arbiters. So it's
but
interesting.
it's now just like, a lot of people, not everybody has the power to do that, but a lot of people are saying, you know what, I was in a movie, but I'm gonna own it.
Mhm.
Like for
Yeah.
years, there's Jessica Harper never about shock treatment, but now she appears at like horror cons, and now she went to the shock treatment screening. And so Leah is, if anything, I think Leah, being as beautiful as she still is and wonderful and relevant as she still is, I think she might be the one that has something to do with Howard coming back.
Yeah, I think it also just has to deal with the fact that, like, obviously, at the time, being in something that's so lambasted and as the punching line or as the punchline for so many easy jokes and whatever, obviously that could be traumatizing in its own way. So I'm sure she just doesn't want anything to remind her of that. But now, as a good, you know, 20, 30 years have gone on, and she's discovered a new fan base, like a cult fan base for this kind of stuff. It's probably helped boost her morale a lot surrounding this. Kind of like with, and there's a welcoming aspect to it, kind of like with Harper, or going to do a non musical reference, Ahmed Best with Star Wars. Like Ahmed Best dealt with horrible shit from Star Wars fans and stuff like that. But now he's kind of come back and people love him again because he's not really embraced Jar Jar, but he's embraced the fandom, and the fandom's kind of embraced him. If not just because we feel sorry for how shittily we treated him. So
Also,
You
in regards to him, like anyone who's watched The Mandalorian, he was actually in the latest season of The Mandalorian,
yep,
playing the
a Jedi.
Jedi that saved Grogu from Order 66,
Yep.
which was
And
pretty
this
cool. So that was like a lot of like that was kind of redeemed him
Yeah.
per se in the world, in the eyes of Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
and Michael Jackson wanted to play Jar Jar Binks. Another Michael Jackson thing. Hey, now
I did hear about that. Yeah.
that
That
would
would
have
be
been weird.
terrible.
y'all can all kiss my ass and Michael. This is what
Misa gonna help you find the Gungan City. Yeah.
That is all yours, James. You
He's
can have
gonna
that
help
one.
the children.
fuck you.
Oh, Annie. Oh, Annie.
Them's fighting words.
Misa going home.
And I'm out. I'm just gonna go
I'm
back.
sorry.
And
I'm sorry. I can't help it.
As much as I love Dolly Parton,
Yep.
I equally love Michael.
Mhm. James is gonna
So-
start swinging. He's gonna
And
start swinging.
y'all are going to be on the Wiz, Moonwalker, and Captain EO triple thing to talk
Sure.
about his roles.
Oh,
But
I
yeah,
used to
sure.
love Captain EO like at Disney when I was a kid. That was awesome. That was such a fun ride.
But with other movies, before movies got released, there were always talks and plans for trilogies and sequels. So even Dick Tracy had sequels
Mhm.
planned. Roger Rabbit had sequels planned, etc. But I have never been able to find information on what the bare bones sequel would be, a script or ideas they had for Howard the Duck, which makes me wonder if they sort of saw the writing on the wall before the movie got released, and that's why there's never been any sort of sequel ideas.
There was buzz
But-
about it becoming a flop even before it was a flop. So, and I
There-
imagine once they were like, $10 or $15 million in and realized that they still had X number of millions that they still had to spend to finish the thing, they were probably like, no, we're only doing one.
Yeah. I'm sure it got to the point where like, let's just get this done.
Just get it
Because like,
done.
because again, the production was hell. Like,
Right.
like not like, I mean, obviously there have been other movies that have had rough production schedules. Like Wizard of Oz had a rough production, but
That's
but
another
the
story.
same.
Yeah. I mean, the
Was
guys
it-
from Red Letter Media, who I love, like if you follow Red Letter Media on YouTube, they talk about when they were making some of their first movies, which they just were fucking around and making movies as like 20-year-olds. They always say that like the first like 5 days are really fun, and after that you're just like, please kill me. And I think that's definitely what they ran into with Howard the Duck.
Hmm.
So
Like we're so far into it, we need to finish it at this point,
We
pretty
can't
much.
back out, we can't shelve it, we can't stop, we just need to finish it, and that's why they have the car chase with the plane.
and I won't
Yes, we didn't even edit it.
We got to get this thing to 2 hours.
and I won't even the Marvel. We're not even going to talk about the Marvel Howard the Duck, but only talking about this movie, and I'll ask each of you. Since Renee's back, I'll ask Renee first. What do you hope is what could be legacy of this movie eventually? Um, maybe not so much Howard reappearing in the MCU, but this particular movie, what would you hope the legacy of this movie could be?
Um, it's just so weird for its time. And I think that's what it's really remembered for and probably will be remembered for because it was so weird. And its weirdness got blown completely out of proportion because of how much they focus on the like 3 minute scene in the bed where nothing happened at all. But like, it was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the legacy is just Howard the Duck is like just this weird oddity of the 80s that you want to remember but you don't want to remember.
Right.
Personally, after I saw the movie, I didn't think it was all that horrific. It was just too long and odd, I guess, but it got blown out of proportion how strange it was. I guess the 80s wasn't ready for that.
The 80s was not ready for this, and the technology to make Howard look like Howard was not ready either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just didn't the I don't know if you guys touched on this, but didn't like the mask burn the kid who was inside it at some point because the
Yeah.
mechanism. No, we did not touch on that. I also heard that the kid had some sort of reaction like, oh wait, that's right. The very end scene with like the explosions and the flames, it caught the suit on fire, and the child actor did get burned inside of the suit in a random happenstance that it was so like it wasn't supposed to happen. Like it was so unlikely to happen that that wasn't even on their radar, and yet it happened, and there was a serious injury to the child. I thought it was also that the mechanism got like too hot in the face or
I heard
something.
that too.
Like
That's
little
what I heard.
servos
Yeah.
and motors in
Yeah.
there.
I heard
Yeah,
that too, that he would get like scars, where it would sit on his face, improperly and stuff, and like would hurt him and stuff. But definitely the very like last scene that they were filming, like where the suit caught on fire. Yeah.
Well, I think if they had a proper cooling thing in the suit, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Well, it was
But
the 80s. They didn't
Yes,
have
the
that.
it's the 80s.
Yeah. Just throw an ice
Yeah.
pack.
Walks around with an air conditioner on his back.
So what else, for the rest of y'all, what do y'all hope the legacy? I mean, you can tie it into MCU Resurrecting Howard, but I'm talking about this particular movie and its wonderful music and its wonderful cast. What do you hope that could possibly come out of?
Blu-rays and 70 millimeter screenings.
I honestly would love to see them do like a 4K restoration, like they do like a big like not like a box set per se, but do like a really nice representation of the movie like on modern media instead of just like finding like VHS copies of it. Like it would be nice to have like a nice clean updated like look
So,
like version
my
of
my
it.
friend, that exists. There is a 4K Howard the Duck
Oh, I did
out
not know
right
that.
now. Yes,
All
it is
right.
out right now. You can actually get it in a steelbook. You get your Howard the Duck steelbook on.
Because I know you love
I am a whore for steelbooks. I love collecting steelbooks, so that's
Mm-hmm.
because I mean Howard the Duck. I mean, I know Helena is really big on physical media, and I'll be that way when I go back to America because Howard the Duck's still not on streaming. And so it's important, I think, to get physical media because you never know, especially shit that Disney's doing with like pulling things off Disney Plus, but it's not just Disney Plus; it's all these streaming platforms are pulling things that are not deemed profitable. So I think it's important to have physical media. So, what about the rest of y'all? What would y'all hope would come out of this?
I think it would be cool to just to add. I think it would be kind of cool to see people doing because you always see like cosplays at like conventions and stuff. It'd be cool to see people like I've never honestly seen a cosplay of Howard the Duck. I think that would be awesome
And
to
Bev-
kind of
Mhm.
just to see that. I think that'd be really cool. I've seen like oddly enough, I've seen cosplays of Darkwing Duck, which is pretty awesome. But it'd be kind of cool to see like people like representing him in like on the con scene.
Yeah.
Give the character more love. Like
Yeah.
I really think like the character in general just needs more love. Like
Agreed.
this movie, like it's as quirky as this movie is, it's like it's not fully embraced by like everybody. And I think that's a shame.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier, it's funny that I was looking at Duckman because we brought up Duckman that was on USA Networks in the
Oh
90s,
God.
which was like the profane, like the properly, it was like the most Howard the Duck. It was more Howard the Duck than Howard the Duck was. And that lasted for 4 seasons. So
And-
there's a place for that.
What I always found this thing real quick of Howard of Duckman, I always thought it was so kind of fucked up that the same, and if you look at it, you could clearly tell the same production company that made Howard the Duck also made Rugrats.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like if you look at the animation, like the
Mhm.
style is exactly the same art style and all. So it's like
You mean
I
Duckman?
always thought that was kind of funny.
Or Duckman, yeah. Duckman and Howard and Rugrats were the same.
Rugrats, they're made by the same production company. Yeah.
But I know this is a hard movie for some people to really like
Yeah.
get to and love. I love it so much because of the music. But is there any I've already named the quotes that I love. Is there any quotes or any scenes that really resonate with you or stick out to you, regardless if they're good or bad? Everyone.
Yes, the Quack Fu reference. I love that because that's mentioned in Darkwing Duck too. So when I heard it in Howard Duck, I was like, "Oh shit, are they related somehow?" Like, well, Marvel owns Disney, and there's like people that say that Donald Duck and Howard the Duck came from the same planet, so technically they could be the same Quack Fu.
I
That's
love
cool. I didn't know that was like traveling.
I would
Well,
say
Donald the Duck is technically he was in a couple episodes of Darkwing Duck. So
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure
That would be
it's there
awesome.
somewhere.
I want to see those two together.
I want to see.
That's the legend I want to come out of it.
That
I want-
15-minute plane ride where they like there was a moment early in the movie where like Howard the Duck sees stuff about like duck hunters and he has like a panic attack and
Oh
he
yeah.
hides. And then he comes back in the plane and is like basically haha bitches, guess what, I'm gonna fuck you up, and he goes after the duck hunters in a plane. Like
Yeah, death from the sky to all duck hunters.
reduced
Yes.
it to like 2 minutes, but like that little itty bit was brilliant in my opinion.
Yeah.
I like the little scene in the diner where he makes the waitress take back the eggs, and then later the villain guy is like, "She took my eggs."
And he's the principal of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, it is.
And the dad from Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Yep.
He's
And
in
he
two-
was the Reverend in
Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow.
Yes. He
Was
was
he
also
too-
in Deadwood.
He's in-
He was the newspaper guy from Deadwood.
He's in too many good things that I like, and I hate that.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
He's a creep.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But yeah, he's an interesting individual. But I mean,
I-
I never
going-
thought of
Just going
I
on
never-
scenes that just going on scenes that I really like the opening scene again, like just that way of visual storytelling of showing his apartment and getting us to know him and just kind of just letting us see the duck world. I thought that was very
Yeah.
cool.
I loved, of course, Don't Turn Away when she's singing and Howard
Mhm.
comes in the car. But I mean, the whole her in the bed with Howard, it's a lot tame than I remember. Because I remember I thought I was kind of screwed up because everybody's like, oh, Leah Thompson and the duck. But I mean, it's not even, it's so tame in terms
He did have an egg-shaped condom in his wallet.
he did. She goes, Howard.
Yep.
I know,
It's
right?
only
The thing is, it's unwrapped. Like, come on,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, but it had to be unwrapped in order to see what it was. I get it. I get it.
So for those who have seen it the first
right out.
time, would you watch it again?
I just ordered the 4K of it because I want to see it up. I want to see it in better quality.
Absolutely.
Yes, but as a drinking game.
Absolutely. We'd have to come up with rules.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't
First
know.
time- Every time somebody says the name Howard, take a shot.
Right.
That's
Every
a
time
lot of shots.
That's a lot of
Every
shots.
time there's a duck pun.
Yeah,
there's
that's
duck
also a lot
pun.
of shots.
Oh god, we'd
Yeah.
be drunk. You'd be drunk in
We'd
like the
have
first
to
5
start-
minutes.
Uh-huh.
We'd have to start like chugging through like the entire flight scene.
Yeah.
Why is it so long?
I don't
I
know.
think we're really excited
they-
about having that
They,
going on.
they
and
needed
all the
they needed
benefits.
filler.
They needed
They
but
they wanted to throw in an
they-
exciting chase scene, so
They didn't need
Yeah.
filler. It's an hour and 51 minutes. Just take that 10 minutes out of there. Trim that out, trim it down. Just keep the thing about the duck hunters. And then yeah.
yeah.
Right? I know they were real excited about landing on that truck and that it took them a lot of tries to land on that truck and that it sucked. So I think they definitely wouldn't leave that part out.
It's
Yeah,
gonna
it's
sound
probably
like, oh, I bet
doable.
they're gonna land on that truck, and then they land on the truck, and you're like, okay, they landed on the truck. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh my God, is he gonna land on that truck? It's like, no, the truck is there, the plane is there. It's obvious that that's gonna happen.
I don't really like Tim Robbins. He's always got I find him endearing, but he always gets on my nerves. The only movie that I like besides the movie that he's in is the Hudsucker Proxy with
Mhm.
Anna Nicole Smith.
I did not know
yeah.
she was in that movie.
Didn't see that one.
I know
Yeah,
Paul
and-
Newman's in that movie.
Anna Nicole's in that movie. Yeah, she plays Jaja.
I was always partial to Shawshank. Shawshank is probably
Oh,
my
yeah.
favorite Tim Robbins movie.
That's too deep. That's too deep for my blood.
It is weird that like
Also,
watching
too,
that movie.
Mr. Krabs is in that movie, which is funnier.
Oh yeah,
That guy. That's so
Clancy
funny that
Brown.
that guy is such a villain. That actor is such a villain in every movie he's ever in, except for being Mr. Krabs, and I kind of love it.
I mean, he's
Like
kind of
Highlander is like one of my favorite 80s movies of all time, and every time the Kurgan comes up on screen, I just can't help but picture Mr. Krabs' voice doing that character.
All I want for this movie is that I would like the soundtrack to be released on vinyl, since vinyl is selling now. I
That'd be
think
cool.
Yeah.
That would be
And-
something
Sure, my
cool they would
parents had
do
that
on
record.
Record Store Day. Have that be like a Record Store Day exclusive
Mhm.
There you go.
soundtrack on vinyl. That'd be awesome.
Renee, you
Yeah,
said your
'cause-
parents had that soundtrack.
I think they did. It was that or Disco Duck, or it was both.
Ugh.
I can't remember, but I
Disco.
think they did. I swear, I think they did. But and you're right about the music though. There is that synth, that particular synth. Like as soon as you hear it, you know exactly what movie it is. You know,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's Howard the Duck. Whether you love it or hate it, you're like, that's Howard the Duck. Or, I know that music.
I love the music. I love the music. Absolutely. Well, thank y'all so much. Do y'all have any other thoughts about this underrated gem? I know we have different opinions about this film, but I think we
Oh.
can all agree that it's
They
entertaining.
do have the soundtrack on vinyl. They do. I just did a quick eBay search just to see. But yes, there's a whole bunch of listings of it must have come out on vinyl at some point in time. But yeah,
Uh-oh.
it is out there.
Good.
The soundtrack to Howard the Duck is on vinyl.
Hey, James.
Fill up that storage unit there, James. Get that storage unit ready for when you get back to the US.
Yeah.
Have so much shit.
Join the
Yeah.
club and join the club.
Shit when I come back. But
There is
thank-
also a Howard the Duck vinyl, pop vinyl.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
of the
But
80s,
it's the cartoon. It's the comic book Howard the Duck, not the 80s Howard the Duck. But still,
James
you
doesn't
know.
want that. He doesn't want that.
well, I'm only 5'2", so I will go as Howard the Duck to a Comic-Con, and Helena, you can dress like Beverly.
Let me
I
get my
wanna-
friend in. Let me get my
I
friend
want to
in.
go to the same con.
Yep.
With
Well,
your head.
I also want to commend Hades for her commitment to the Howard the Duck white face and orange lips, and she's been pursing
And
her
then
lips
I
this
also
whole
did the
time.
red around the eyes to
Yeah,
like
Nice.
yeah, that's really disturbing. Thank you for showing me that. I will be scarred for life. That'll be in my nightmares. But yeah, I noticed that you've been like kind of pursing your lips the whole time, like a duck bill. You're kind of been like, you know.
if I see my face on a camera, I can't help but
Weird
make
enough. I'm pretty sure this movie is supposed to. I'm pretty sure this movie was filmed in California. Like everything was filmed in California in the 80s. But it's supposed to be set in Ohio. But this is
Mhm.
totally not Ohio.
No.
Beverly Hills. Yeah, no.
It's
I
supposed to
think
be
they wanted to film it in Hawaii
no,
just because they thought it would be cool. I
but
don't know
this
if they actually did though.
this is supposed to be set in Cleveland, Ohio, though.
Yeah, yeah.
But it doesn't look like Ohio at all. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this was filmed in California.
I didn't see it.
Sacramento and
I
San
can't.
Francisco. It's
Yes,
Bay Area.
I just looked it up.
I
Because
can't
they
recall
just-
seeing a single corn or soybean field. So
Yeah, there's way too much terrain.
Agreed.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
you
it's,
know what?
I didn't see a hell is real sign or a grandpa's cheese barn.
And this
If you
is
know, if you know.
and this I'll leave it at this. I'll leave it at this. There's a whole I promise you this is it. There's a theory when I was doing cult musicals con and I was trying to set different cult musicals in different cities. I actually reached out to Buffalo Rocky. I was like, right. So Denton, Ohio or Denton, Texas for Rocky Horror and Shock Treatment. And they're Rocky Horror fanatics. So they said, set Rocky Horror in Denton, Ohio and set Shock Treatment in Denton, Texas. So if Rocky Horror is set in Denton, Ohio, then possibly there's a Rocky Horror connection with Howard the Duck. Maybe maybe where Howard's from is near transsexual Transylvania.
Or maybe they hitched a ride or something.
the
Or
being
they're hiding in Janet and Brad's trunk the whole time.
you open that trunk and Howard the Duck just flies out.
There's more connections. I'm sure there's more cult musical connections.
the cult music cinematic universe.
Mm.
And there was a massive Howard the Duck movie page, Facebook, but for whatever reason, in 2020 they stopped posting, and it was called Misunderstood Mallard, and Misunderstood Mallard. But as of 2020, they quit posting. So I'm trying to find fan communities to this. I've reached out to people. Leah Thompson liked one video that I tagged her in one time when it was cult musical song of the day of "Don't Turn Around," "Don't Turn Away." "Don't Turn Around" is Xanadu, isn't it?
Don't walk
Don't walk away.
Right.
Don't walk away. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a connection.
Don't say goodbye.
There's so many things. There's so many interconnected things going on. But since we're leaving, is there anything that you want to say about Howard or plug before we pull the plug? Give it a chance.
Give it a chance.
I hope to make a new movie. I do.
I hope to make a mini series.
Yeah,
miniseries?
something. I want that Kevin Smith one. He'd do it justice.
Kevin's
Kevin Smith was supposed to do a Howard the Duck cartoon, like for Hulu, but I guess because when all the rights were being kind of switched around with everything, like Disney ended up like pulling it back because they wanted to save the character for their platform.
I mean, James Gunn could do it. Also justice, I think.
Oh, 100%. Like
Yeah.
like the fact that he included Howard the Duck in little cameos in all the Guardians films was
He's him.
fantastic.
Like he knows what's going on.
Also, just throw it in random James Gunn reference, but in Guardians of the Galaxy, when they go to the collector's big room, if you look in one of the tubes, there's the slugs from Slither in there,
That's
which
awesome.
I thought was pretty awesome. Like that was fun. That was a fun little.
get Leah, as long as they get Leah, because she's really trying to get involved with Howard. She even volunteered to write and direct and produce the sequel or the new movie.
Maybe it's
So-
like Howard the Duck Jr., but it's like Leah and Howard's progeny.
Or their baby.
That or it'd be really cool if like another way to bring Howard the Duck back into, if you want to bring him back into the MCU proper, include him in the new Deadpool movie.
Totally. That would fit. That would be a perfect
That
fit.
that
Yeah.
that would fit perfectly. Plus there was also there was a Deadpool and Howard the Duck comic book series for a while.
Oh,
Oh.
So that
That's
would
awesome.
actually be
I like that.
pretty awesome.
I would read that.
Yeah.
Maybe be like, and maybe if they do make a new Howard the Duck, maybe it will give this movie recognition, kind of like the new Super Mario Brother movie has people rewatching the Super Mario movie with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo.
Mhm.
Is that
Wait.
good though? I don't know.
Got it. He's got it. Oh, nice. Yep.
Look at that.
Deadpool
Well, we
the
look-
Duck,
Howard Pool.
Howard Poole.
Howard. It's basically it's the comic book. This is the first issue. This particular series, there was some weird like lab explosion, and Deadpool got fused into Howard the Duck, into the body of Howard the Duck.
That's perfect.
I'm done. That's amazing.
Fucking awesome.
I want that movie.
Yeah, I
Seriously.
want that movie.
Make the next movie after the one with Wolverine.
Yeah.
Marvel
Like
needs to
how-
change.
I also can't keep up with the Marvel movies. Don't feel bad. A little bit I can, but
I haven't
then I get
watched-
overwhelmed.
I just recently watched Guardians 3, so I'm behind.
I need to
I
watch
don't know if I
that.
need to.
I loved I mean, James, you seriously, you do need to watch the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Isn't
You
one,
must.
one
Well,
of
the
them's about,
three.
right? The third
Yeah.
one's about rights, correct?
Third one just came out recently.
Third one
Yeah.
just came this year, but
Well,
you
the
should
third-
really
If
watch
you
them.
have Disney Plus, they're all on Disney Plus right now.
Yeah.
They're it's worth it because the soundtrack is
Oh.
just
You are gonna
chef's
die for the
kiss.
soundtrack. You will love it. You will eat it up.
Yes.
I know
Oh,
they
yeah.
sound good, but I just can't get into Marvel. I'm weird. So I'm trying to be.
This is not, I would say that there's Marvel and then
They
there's
are
this.
unique.
This is separate.
The
I mean,
Outcast.
it's a Marvel movie, but it's like it's on a whole different plane of existence.
Yeah.
The
I
Fringe
think-
Marvel.
I will watch Guardians of the Galaxy if y'all watch Barbed Wire with Pamela Anderson.
I've seen Barbed Wire.
I just
I've seen
literally
that.
bought Barbed Wire on VHS at a garage sale.
I'll watch it tomorrow. Thank God.
Yeah.
It's super.
It's-
You're gonna have such fun with Guardians of the Galaxy. I think you're gonna overlook the fact that it's Marvel and you're gonna have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like the
Um,
musical aspect alone of those movies is really what kind of draws you into.
Absolutely.
Music plays such a central role to all of those movies.
Absolutely. There's like a huge thing where, like, not to spoil anything, but like Star-Lord introduces music to an alien race and it blows her fucking mind.
I've been converted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But I
it's
Good
a
job, everyone.
small scene,
Of
But I'm
like
still-
one of us.
drop tears. It's just beautiful. I love it.
Still got to stick with my bad superhero movies, which are Howard the Duck, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Barbed Wire, and Tank Girl.
Mhm.
And Guardians of the Galaxy.
Uh,
Good.
Yeah.
You'll get it.